Hi there, I'm Clarence Waldron. Welcome back to another Black Muse. Tonight, we're going to do something very different never done before, and that is flip the script. I will not be doing the interview. We have a guest interviewer here, Dr. Margina A. Christian, a friend of mine from our Jet magazine years. She is now a UIC professor and the author of this great book, Empire, the House that John H. Johnson Built. It's a bestseller. You still get it, still get it. Also, full disclosure, this whole idea came from our viewer, one of our devoted, loyal viewers, Clarence McCrae, here in Chicago. He said, Clarence, we want to know more about you. We want to know more about what you think. So maybe we can just, for 1 week, just sort of flip the script? So we said, sure. So here we are. So Margina Christian, lead the way.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's dig right in. So, Stoff, tell me, you once wrote a story about Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song, and there's a picture of you, a classic photograph of you on an airplane speaking with her, interviewing her. And just last week on Black Muse, you interviewed Dr. Tammy Conato about that, and you kind of talked about Ella Fitzgerald. Do tell more.
Yeah, this was in 1983. I had just gotten to Jet Magazine in October of 82. So this is my very beginning. And all of a sudden, they gave me the assignment of Ella Fitzgerald. And I'm saying, Ella Fitzgerald, the legend? Oh my God. So that was that. We flew on the plane from Chicago to Denver. And the whole idea, she was there to start a new pub, a jazz pub. So she performed on the flight. And I saw her sitting there with a friend of hers. And being the aggressive guy that I am, I just said, let me just go ahead and do try an interview. And I did. And so she said, oh, I said, can I sit there, to her friend? Oh, well, let me check. She leaned over to Ella. Ella said, fine. I said, all right, here I am. So that was it. So the whole idea, it was an interview that she gave me. Turns out to be the only interview that she gave that day. So that made it very, very special. Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow. Now, did you end up keeping in touch with Ella Fitzgerald?
Absolutely, absolutely. As a matter of fact, in June of '83, I went to see her at Ravinia, and she was in rare form, rare form. And I went backstage and I asked her to autograph the photo, and she loved the story, and she said certainly, certainly, certainly. And she did that thing right then and there. So and then after that, I used to always call her for Christmas stories. Like what are the stars want for Christmas? Kind of stuff. And she always answered the phone. Hi, Clarence. Okay, whatever, whatever, whatever. And then also I would see her at the JVC Jazz Festival up in New York, Carnegie Hall. And I just loved her music. So it was a dream situation. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, speaking of legends, most recently, Dionne Warwick was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there is another Clarence Waldron story, almost a full circle moment with you and being introduced to legends. When you were just a student at Columbia University, I understand that Dionne Warwick was one of the first people you actually interviewed.
She was the first. She was the first. And it was an amazing moment, Margina. It was supposed to be a 30-minute interview, the standard questions in and out. Somehow or another, Spirit worked it out. I was there for at least 2 hours, 2 good hours. And we talked about everything. And it turned out the interview was somewhat spiritual. I said, I told her, I sort of feel that God is working something out here, Dionne. And if my career ever takes off, I'm going to remember this moment sitting here with you. And she said, well, that's good. That's great. I know it. But don't stop with me. There are so many others out there, Clarence, that you need to get to. Lena Horne, Ella Fitzgerald, that kind of situation. So but that was the first the beginning of it all. And she also said something to me too. Said, Clarence, there is no top. There is no top. The top is what you want it to be, and that should be your attitude. So whatever you want, just go get it. So words that I still live by even to this day.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, while we're still in your college years at Columbia University, you were also a waymaker. I understand that you were instrumental in helping to was it found, publish a start rather a literary publication called Black Heights to highlight Black excellence with writers. What inspired you to do this?
It's funny. I never thought about that until I got a phone call from a current student of Columbia who's a senior at that time. She said, Clarence, I believe that you and that Black Heights, y'all made history. I said, how so? I said, well, I did my research, I did the archives, and there's no other record of a literary magazine for Black students. So I said, maybe you're right. And also back when I did it, back in my mind, I was thinking, this may be the first one, but I didn't care about that. I said, let's just do quality work. Let's just get the magazine out. Let's just do it like that. So that was my Black Heights experience. But also, there's another name that we should mention, Toni Morrison. I sent Toni Morrison a letter asking her to come speak at the university to help us raise money for the magazine,
Okay.
and she immediately responded, "Yes, it sounds first rate." So she came up and did a little talk. In that first issue, we had James Earl Jones, who was in a
Oh,
Broadway play on Paul Robeson. And it was somewhat of a controversy, but nevertheless, he came up to do that. And then along the way, we also had Gwendolyn Brooks, the poet, came up to the
yes.
university as well.
Okay.
So I look back at it now and said, you were doing some things, some sort of big boy stuff when you were a little kid. You were a
Right.
little kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how history works. You're not thinking that you're making history. You're trying to make a difference. And along the way, if you're able to do both, that's what makes it even more magnificent. Now, speaking of, after you graduated from Columbia University, I understand that you went on to get your master's degree in journalism, but you were on a full fellowship, the RCA NBC fellowship. Tell me about that, and what did that moment mean to you?
Yeah, that meant that I was going to be able to study without worrying about finances, worrying about bills being paid, study the craft of journalism, Margina, the mechanics of it. I
Yes,
wanted to learn it. And then although I did the Dion interview, that was not based on any training. It was just based on interest in the subject matter, which is very important as well. But there's no training there at all. So I wanted that training. I wanted to know, I wanted to be able to say that I am now a bona fide, a real journalist. And that's what that school gave me for sure. Absolutely.
and we know that one of the training grounds for a lot of journalists, I like to say, was the University of Johnson Publishing Company, and you moved to Chicago, and your career started. Was it in 1982 at the pioneering company, uh, Johnson Publishing Company, but the pioneering weekly, Jet magazine. So how did you end up at Jet in
Yeah.
1980?
Yeah. Well, the first job that I ever had, I worked for Atlantic City Press right after school. So I did 2 years there, and I felt that I sort of paid my dues. It was I sort of went through a lot there. So I got this phone call from my former professor from Columbia J School. Her name is Phil Garland, and that really set it off. She said, Clarence, I hear that they want some young writers for Jet Magazine. And I think that you'll be ideal. I said, you think so? I mean, that's in Chicago? He said, yeah, I think so. I'm like, oh God. So anyway, she said, here's the number, call them, set it up. And I flew out for the interview. And I knew on the spot that I had the job. I knew, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But yeah, that was it. So that came from Phil Garland, who also had worked for Ebony as well. So she knew the inside of the magazines and felt that I could survive it all.
Okay. Okay. So you had the interview and you said you knew you had the job. But for anyone who managed to work at Johnson Publishing Company, the buck stopped at John H. Johnson. Now, tell me, what was it like working with the pioneering publishing magnate, John H. Johnson, and also someone else who isn't talked about nearly enough, the late great associate publisher and executive editor of Jet Magazine, Robert E. Johnson, that we all affectionately call Bob. What's it like working with both of them?
Yeah, yeah. Let's start with Bob for a minute. When I interviewed with him, I just felt something immediate. I said, this guy is a Morehouse man. There's a Southern background as well. And I hear that Southern accent, and I love that educated, but that Southern crisp accent that Bob had. And I said, I like that. I like that. And in reality, Gene, I never said this before, but I never really had that many black instructors in later years,
Okay.
besides Phil Garland, for the
Okay.
most part, Phil Garland. So I was impressed with these men, these brothers running this show and running it so well that I walked out of there saying, I want to work for Bob Johnson. I'm done. I want this.
Okay.
So that's it. Then so let's backtrack. So then earlier, before I went downstairs to meet Bob, I met John H. Johnson. He was standing on the 10th floor on the patio, looking, overlooking Grant Park. And he just said how much he loved this building. So the magazines have been profitable, but how I had sort of built this building, and there's nothing like it at all, and all this energy, which you should know about that from your
Oh,
study,
yes.
your book. So I like that about him. I said, very good guy. Once I got the job and I got to know him, I realized that for a CEO, president, founder, whatever, he was accessible. You could call John H. Johnson and you could just tell him whatever problem that you're having. And sometimes he called me upstairs and we have a private conference. Usually he said, Clarence, you can tell me whatever it is on the phone. On the phone, it'll be just fine. But where else could you get that kind of energy from a CEO? You know what I mean? You don't get that. You don't get that. So I'm very fortunate to have that. He also taught me something that's very basic, but it's very, very true. He taught me to count my money. I'm like, okay. One time I was going out on assignment someplace, and there was an air trip, man, to rush to the airport to rush to. So he gave me money from his pocket this time. We had no time to go and cash the check. So he gave it to me. I said, okay, thank you. All right, I'm gone. I'm gone. Clarence. I said, yeah. He said, no, count your money. Count your money for yourself. Now, I gave you X amount of dollars, but you need to know for yourself before you leave my site how much money I gave you. Valuable lesson. Valuable lesson. And I even shared that with Aretha one time, and she said, yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So anyway, go ahead.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, for nearly 3 decades, to be precise, you were at Johnson Publishing Company, Jet Magazine, for 29 years. Who were some of the celebrities and notables that you were most fortunate to interview? And this was a job, something you did every day, like I said, for almost 30 years.
Mm. There's so many, and maybe you help me with some of them. But of course, Whitney Houston's first Jet cover story. I did Luther Vandross's first cover story. I did Frankie Beverly's first cover story. I did Tavis Smiley's cover story. I did uh, Minister Louis Farrakhan's first, and yeah, several others, but cover story as well. Anita Baker. And there's someone else that I'm just not remembering right now. So yeah, but every day was always different. You never knew who would be on your roster to interview or to go downstairs to meet and greet and all that kind of stuff. Also NDRE. NDRE was someone else, one of my first. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And you hosted so many people and wrote so many cover stories, and so many people who weren't on the cover that you had the pleasure of interviewing as well. Namely, one, wink, wink, Prince Rogers Nelson, who invited you to his Paisley Park, and that didn't happen often. He didn't open the doors for very many people, but as he called you, Brother Clarence.
You remember that?
Brother Clarence. Oh,
Yes.
yes, you had to tell me all about
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was another one, and that was a cover story actually. And
it. That was
but the only thing about it that it was a challenge for me because he did not want me to use my tape recorder. So I'm ready to go. I had it right there. He said, "Oh no, 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 brother. With no recorders, no recorders, huh?" And at first I got real like, well, how will I interview you? How will I remember what you said when I get back to Chicago? He said, Clarence, the best stories are always the ones that you remember in your heart. So if I say something that sparks an interest, you remember that. You'll take from this interview only what you need. So no recorder. And so I learned something from him as well, because in reality, that does sort of make sense. But it's easier to have the recorder to sort of fall back on. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Paisley Park is in your heart, and so will be the words for the interview and what you will put on the pages for Jet Magazine.
exactly.
Is
He
now,
was deep. He was deep.
yes, indeed. Now you and so are you, and you came from the East Coast, so East Orange, New Jersey. So now tell me about life growing up for little Clarence.
Ooh, y'all. First of all, I realized that it was a beautiful place to grow up in. We had, it was big houses and all of that, trees and manicured lawns and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that, or I came to just sort of say it out loud after I attended the Dionne Warwick street naming ceremony in Jersey, in East Orange. And of course, she's an East Orange girl, and she's up there saying East Orange. EO, beautiful city. I said, oh my God, she's right. She's right. She's right. So in that regard, it was, you can imagine. But also, in my case, I was raised by a foster family in East Orange. So that certainly brought some challenges. But then again, not that many. Because my foster family, the Culvers, were very loving and very caring, and they always celebrated me. They could tell now that they were not educated, but they could tell that I'm getting A's and B's. Hmm. Very smart, Clarence. Very good. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up. So that's sort of what happened there. I look back at my life. I spent a lot of time in the library. I love going to the East Orange Public Library, reading all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? So that was it. I did the public school system there, up high school, East Orange High School. Um, and then I was studying with my crew, as we say, Daryl Richardson and Alfonso Kroom and Anthony Blackman. We were the smart kids in school. We were the smart ones. And we knew it. We knew it. But then after 2 years of that, I got a call that I got accepted into the Better Chance program, ABC program, to attend high school in a prep school, boarding school situation in New York. And that just was like lights were on then. We all knew there was something special gonna happen for Clarence Waldron. Something's gonna happen. And so that was that. Yeah. So that's my childhood in a nutshell. In a nutshell.
Okay. Now, those loyal followers and viewers of Black Muse know every week there's a question.
Mm.
Who inspired you? And now I'm going to ask you, who inspired you? Who told you that you would be great?
First of all, my parents, of course, that I mentioned, my foster parents, but I don't use the word foster, but my parents were the first ones that, you're smart, My mother used to say, you have a very nice smile. You have a very nice smile and a good personality. People will like you. People will want to work with you. So that's one there. My cousin, Mumtaz Barry Brown, and her husband, the late Dr. Ronald Brown, they became my role models. And my friend said, Clarence, wait a minute, you have the Huxtables right in your family. You have the Huxtables right there. They're role models. And I said, oh my God, you're right. You're right. So when I got into Darrell School, they were the ones who would come up for the teacher-parent weekends and all that kind of stuff and meet with my teachers and all of that. So they're definitely inspirations to themselves. And then last in that little list, you know who it is. You know who it is. You're smiling, Mrs. Betty H. Niels, my fifth grade teacher. I love her so. She's given me so much, so many things to I find with her, like Maya Angelou, I talk to her over the phone. I'm always taking notes because there's so much knowledge there, like really, and this and that and that and that. Betty H. Niels, great teacher. She really took me in and wanted me to be in her class. She was the first Black teacher that I had, and she really asked for me to be in her class. And that's when all the A's and the B's started. And I ain't looked back since. I ain't looked back since. Yes, indeed. And I know that her kids get tired of hearing about Clarence Waldron in fifth grade, but they're okay with it. They're okay with it.
Oh, okay. Now, you became, in addition to your career in editing, you also, there's another E in your life, an educator. Later on, you started teaching at the collegiate level at the famed Medill School of Journalism, Northwestern University, also at Columbia College in Chicago and Loyola University. Students did you teach? Tell me about that.
They were all very bright students. They were all very talented students, and they all were young people of character and sensitivity. And if I did not know for sure, then once I had my stroke, my students were all in my house. They were buying me things, my favorite wine. I'll tell you about that later on. My favorite wine that Maya Angelou got me into as well. But they were, grocery shopping for me and all that. So if I had no idea of the character of people I had taught, I learned then. Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so.
Now, throughout your illustrious career, you were the almost the cherry on top of the cake, if you will.
Hmm.
You were honored by the National Association of Black Journalists with the Legacy Award, and you were also given the title of the Dean of Entertainment Journalists. What was that? Describe that night in 2010.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, I dedicated the award to my aunt, Kat, who was the one who was she was the first Dionne Warwick concert that I ever went to. She paid for me to go, and I just always remember that. And I dedicated the award to her that night. It was a nice moment. All the stars were on the video praising Clarence Waldron, Jesse Jackson, Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, of course my divas now. You know that. Dionne Warwick. Nancy Wilson, Aretha Franklin, of course, but it was very, very exciting to be honored that way by my peers. And it was my first national award. You know what I mean? This is a national thing. So it really mattered to me that they chose me, to do it, to present.
Yes, and the honors didn't stop. How could they stop?
Mm.
You received the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Chicago Headline Club 9 years after that, in 2019. What did that honor mean to you?
That continue the amazing joy and pride that I had. You know what I mean? It was just amazing that they thought that I've done a lifetime of great work, of great stories. You know what I mean? From the little kid from Columbia University to now, it was a complete full circle moment. So I'm very grateful for it. And anytime you get a lifetime award, if it's a Grammy, lifetime award, Emmy, whatever, lifetime is lifetime. So that's a high honor for sure.
Yes, yes. Well, we're about to end, but did you hear that? Frankie Beverly, before I let go. What what what's in store for Clarence Waldron? What's next?
You know what's next, and you know the answer to this already. Um, I've got to get my book out. That's the next step. And I talked to my nieces, Jasmine and Leticia about the book because they want to know. They want to know, and so that's the next step. I'm 90% there. I'm just fighting with this last chapter and all that. But the ultimate goal is, the final thing. But also, I'm not looking for a bestseller. No, no, I'm not. I just want it to be just a little blueprint, if you will, to give to my families,
Okay.
the Culvers, the Waldrons, the kids that I informally adopted. I got that phrase from Count Basie. He had three informally adopted kids. So that means informally was never formal adoption. And I said, I like that phrase. I said, maybe I'll go ahead and get me some informally adopted kids. So, so,
Okay.
so, 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 Heaven and Amira and Rod Jr. and Dejanay, the Roderick Cooper family are also part of my family. So the book would be for them to read, to understand how Clarence went from point A to point B. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share or add with the Black Muse viewers?
There's one person that I did not mention about stars that I've befriended, and that's Dr. Maya Angelou. She was very special to me. She invited me to her Thanksgiving dinners, and one time she said, do you drink some wine? I said, oh, sure. Oh, please get Mr. Waldron a big glass of that Chardonnay. And the woman did, and it was a big glass of Chardonnay. And it was not, she said, it's not expensive, but it's very, very good. Now, of course, in my mind, I said, I know that if my answer has it, it's very expensive. But in reality, you can get at Jules. You can get at Jules. So, but she was always encouraging whenever I would call her about my book writing projects and all that stuff, always answer my phone calls, always there for me. Yeah. So, but actually, I wanted to end this conversation the way that Della Risa ended yours by saying, "No, baby," but I couldn't do it. I'm sorry.
Right, right, right. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, no,
Yes.
baby, no, baby.
Well, this has certainly been a pleasure speaking with you and flipping the script. You interview everyone. It's time for you to sit back and for people to learn about you, the Dean of Entertainment Journalism, Clarence Waldron,
My
loved
Lord.
all over
And
and
throughout
throughout.
the world. Yes,
Huh?
indeed. Yes, indeed. All right.
Yes.
So I also want to give a special thank you to you, Margina, for making the time to do this. This is not you don't really do all this now. You're teaching school and all that stuff. So I do appreciate you. Also, the Sandifers, Howard and Darlene, this whole project, this video podcast is their idea. They said, let's have lively conversations. And I sort of think that we had another lively conversation. So to my viewers out there, please click like and subscribe. We've got to get more viewers to look at the program. So please click like and subscribe. Thank you all. See you next week.